UFC Fight Night Vegas 30 Gane versus Volkov takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. And let's waste no more time and start with the early prelim opener of Yancy Medeiros versus Damir Hadzovic. Great fight to start off the card in the lightweight division. Yancy Medeiros, long-time veteran of the UFC. Damir Hadzovic, also a little bit of a veteran of the UFC himself, but I think Yancy Medeiros has just fought way better competition throughout his career and has ended up with similar results to Damir Hadzovic, who has not fought too great of competition in his career. I mean, the best fighter he maybe took on was Renato Moicano, and that was an immediate finish. Relatively easy for Renato Moicano. Yancy Medeiros has been in there with some good names. Dustin Poirier, Donald Cerrone, Francisco Trinaldo, Gregor Gillespie more recently in the division. I really like Yancy Medeiros here. I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. And when I'm thinking about a stand-up fight, I like Yancy Medeiros' pace. I like Yancy Medeiros' reach that he has in this division, 75.5 inches over the 70 inches of Damir Hadzovic. And in a stand-up contest, where I consider these guys around the same level, I'm going to go with the pace, cardio, and massive reach advantage of Yancy Medeiros here. In a relatively even bout, I think this is going to topple it in Yancy Medeiros' favour, and I think he will get the job done by unanimous decision. I'll say 30-27, Yancy Medeiros wins every round based on volume and just landing more than Damir Hadzovic, marking up his face with 1-2s all night long. Moving on up the card, Charles Rosa versus Justin Jaynes in the featherweight division. I'm going to go with Justin Jaynes here. Okay, I like Justin Jaynes. I like his ferocity in those opening rounds. Even when he's going out there with a guy like Gabriel Benitez, who's clearly better than him and is just destroying his legs and destroying his body, he's still going out there swinging, looking for the finish in that first round. I think he's going to crack Charles Rosa on the chin, and I'm going to go with Justin Jaynes with a big upset against Charles Rosa early on the card, and I think he will get the first round KO over Charles Rosa. I like Charles Rosa, but he is really terribly bad. And he is kind of like the non-worn down guy here. I mean, Justin Jaynes has more experience. It's seen that Charles Rosa's the favourite here, but he's the older guy, 34 years of age. Justin Jaynes, 31, still close to his prime. I think Justin Jaynes is going to go out there like a wrecking machine, knowing that he'll get cut if he loses, and just go straight after Charles Rosa and really expose some striking holes in the defence of Charles Rosa. I don't like Charles Rosa's striking whatsoever. I don't see him being able to shift a very strong Justin Jaynes in the first round to the canvas. I think there's going to be a round of stand-up here in round one, and I like Justin Jaynes' chances going forward and winging bombs like he did against Frank Camacho and putting Charles Rosa out in the first round. I'm going with a big upset for Justin Jaynes. I really hate watching Charles Rosa fight because there was a moment in his career where he actually looked kind of good, around the Shane Burgos region of his career, threw shots well. I don't know what kind of surgery he had or what happened to him. Maybe he got hit by a bus or something like that, but afterwards, he's looked absolutely shocking in his career. His stand-up is appalling. I'm going to be going with Justin Jaynes, really making him shit himself in the first round, and I think he's going to get the KO blow on Charles Rosa. Justin Jaynes gets this one done. Moving on up the card, Julija Avila versus Julija Stoliarenko. Great scrap, rescheduled from a previous bout because Julija Stoliarenko fainted on the scales twice and had a really bad weight cut. We're in the same division again. I'm going to go with Julija Avila. I went with her the first time. She's got a better record, fought better competition. She's looked better in the octagon compared to Julija Stoliarenko. Much better technique, I would argue. Great scrap. Great hands on Julija Avila as well. Finished Gina Mazzani in the first round with some really good combination punches. Hurt her to the body first and then finished up with strikes afterwards. I like Julija Avila here, and also I can't help but kind of understand that this is exactly the same fight as the first time, but 3 months later, except this time Julija Avila made weight easily, and Julija Stoliarenko almost died on the scale. So when I'm trying to predict this fight, and Julija Stoliarenko in this same weight class almost died on the scale, I'm not going to pick her and then wait for the weigh-ins and watch her almost faint and pass out again. It's not very trustworthy. I'll go with the safe bet, Julija Avila. I can trust her to make weight, and I think she's a better technical opponent than Julija Stoliarenko as well. Moving on up the card, Marcin Prachnio versus EK Villanueva. I'm going to go with Marcin Prachnio here. I think he'll get the job done by decision. I like EK Villanueva. I kind of root for him because he's a nice guy. He's a family man. He arguably shouldn't even be in the UFC, but here we are. Got a big win against Vinicius Mejia, but then again, I do believe that Vinicius Mejia is the worst fighter ever to be in the UFC ever. Maybe. Jiu-jitsu guy who never shoots a takedown ever and just stands up the entire time and never throws a punch because he knows he's got a glass chin. The one moment that he threw a punch against EK Villanueva, he got completely laid out cold. I like the stand-up of Marcin Prachnio. I know he's been chinned in his career before, but then again, so has EK Villanueva. He's been finished by strikes before in his career. I think Marcin Prachnio is going to be able to delay the fight, make it a really boring fight like he did against Khalil Roundtree, and just get a 30-27 unanimous decision, moving backwards, keeping it at range, and outlanding EK Villanueva over the 3 rounds. I'm going with Marcin Prachnio. I worry about his chin, but I don't think he's going to be as bad as Vinicius Mejia. And I think even Vinicius Mejia made it to the end of the 2nd round before getting caught by EK Villanueva. I'll go with Prachnio keeping it at range and winning this one by outpointing Villanueva over the 3 rounds. Prachnio gets it done by decision. Moving on up the card, Warlley Alves versus Jeremiah Wells. Now, I'm going with Warlley Alves. I'm looking for things when I see short notice replacement opponents, okay? Jeremiah Wells has not been in the cage in a while. Normally when I'm looking for short notice replacements to go and win, I'm looking for a guy who's fast, who's young, who's got a lot of quick KOs in their career, because if you're taking a fight on short notice, your one big chance is to get something done in the 1st round, because arguably the guy is going to have better cardio than you moving on into the bout. One of the big weaknesses of Warlley Alves is his cardio in his career as well, by the way. But against a short notice opponent, I don't think I'm going to go with a short notice guy being able to drown him in deep waters. I'll go with Warlley Alves here getting a 1st round KO over Jeremiah Wells. Wells is good. He's a little bit old, 34 years of age, 30 years of age for Warlley Alves. Not really good looking for a guy coming in on short notice. Doesn't really have too many quick finishes in the 1st round. Doesn't really have too devastating of KO power. And just isn't that good in general. He had a fight booked in the UFC against Miguel Boser and some other opponents. Those got rescheduled and cancelled. So he has been accepted into the UFC. This is not just a guy they've plucked out of nowhere. However, I still believe that Warlley Alves gets this one done. I just don't see any of the signs that I need to see from a guy in Jeremiah Wells on short notice. I'm going with Warlley Alves by 1st round KO. Moving, and he looked really good against Munir Lazzez as well, so you've got to take that into consideration. Warlley Alves is looking real rejuvenated in his career, and if he wins this one, he's starting to look at big names in the welterweight division to try and jump himself up those rankings, and he's still in his prime. I'm going with Warlley Alves. Moving on up the card, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Michel Prazeres. I'm going with Shavkat. It's risky, though. I'll be honest with you. Michel Prazeres does not get enough respect, man. He has some really good wins in his career. Really underrated fighter. No one really knows of him because he hasn't fought in a very long time, but he has some wins on his record that you would be shocked when I tell you about. I mean, he has wins over Zach Cummings, which isn't too shocking, don't get me wrong, but Zach Cummings is still beating people in the division that he's in. I think it's middleweight right now. I don't even know what he's doing with his career, but either way, Michel Prazeres is doing real good with his career. Beat Mads Burnell, beat Desmond Green, beat Gilbert Burns by unanimous decision earlier in his career. Either way, I think he's a little bit too old now, 39, coming back after a very long layoff, over 2 years and 4 months. I don't like that look for him, in all honesty. All of that time off in his old age. Is he still training 100% during that time to go on another run for the title? I would doubt it. I think after his loss to Ismail Nurdiev, he probably thought to himself, right, I'm just going to take some time off. Not really liking this too much anymore. Maybe I'll come back if they give me a call. Who knows? Other than that, I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov, man. I really like this guy. I picked him to win by guillotine in his debut, and I'm going to pick him to win by guillotine again. And not just because I think he's going to get a submission. I think he's going to hurt Prazeres to the level on the feet, where Prazeres is going to shoot a panic takedown, and then Rakhmonov's going to latch up the guillotine. He's got one previously in his career. He also got one in his UFC debut against Alex Oliveira, and I predicted him to do so by guillotine choke as well. I like Shavkat Rakhmonov, he is a bit suspect sometimes. He has been cracked in his career. He has been hurt on the chin before in his career as well. He had to come back in the later rounds at one point after being really badly beaten in the first. But then again, that kind of shows me that he can go through adversity and come back on the other side. Has some amateur experience, has a lot of pro experience now, 13-0. I think I trust him to go out there and beat Michel Prazeres. If he didn't take on a guy like Oliveira in his debut, maybe I'd worry about him because he could just not be as good. But Alex Oliveira is a tough veteran. It really does mean something to beat Alex Oliveira in the welterweight division. He's not a bad fighter by any means. I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov getting the job done by first round guillotine choke again. I think he gets 2 in a row. And Prazeres gets hit on the chin and rocked and shoots a bad takedown to try and alleviate pressure. And he gets put under more pressure around his neck when Rakhmonov puts him in a guillotine. Moving on, up the card, who is next? Raoni Barcelos versus Timur Valiev. You know what it is about this card? They don't have enough big names for people to really appreciate it, but this is a really good card if you know the sport. Like, Raoni Barcelos versus Timur Valiev. Amazing scrap. I really wish Raoni Barcelos would get jumped into the rankings already because he is a very old man and we don't have much time left. I do believe he's going to get the job done against Timur Valiev. I like Timur Valiev. I think he got a little bit overexcited in his debut. Showed a different side to him in the Martin Day fight as well. I like Timur Valiev, in all honesty. Also 31 years of age. He's not a young up-and-comer. I just believe Raoni Barcelos... Listen, Said Nurmagomedov was the next big thing. Raoni Barcelos gets the job done against him. Like, it's not just that Raoni can beat cans. Raoni can whoop up really good seasoned competition opponents like Said Nurmagomedov. And it might be close. In all honesty, I might go over 29-28 unanimous decision for Raoni Barcelos here, but I think he's going to be able to grind through moments where Timur Valiev just hasn't been tested yet, and I think he's going to work all areas of the game, chopping at the legs of Timur Valiev. His leg kicks looked amazing. He looked like a fucking second coming of Jose Aldo in his last fight against Khalid Taha and put a real whooping on Khalid Taha over 3 rounds, and he just looked better than ever. That's why I'm going with Raoni Barcelos. Timur Valiev in his last fight looked worse than he looked against his first opponent, who was Trevin Jones, which he did get finished in, by the way, in the second round, but he was destroying Trevin Jones in that early round. It eventually got overturned to a no contest, by the way. But after that, against Martin Day, looked a little bit more hesitant, a little bit more careful about his approach. I think I need a savage in him, and I think he lost that by being finished by Trevin Jones. I think he worries a little bit too much, and I think Raoni Barcelos looking better than ever at 34 is something that I just have to pay attention to. So I'm going to go with Raoni Barcelos getting this one done by unanimous decision, 29-28. I wouldn't be surprised if someone gives the fight to Timur Valiev, but I'm going to go with Raoni Barcelos here in a razor-close, scrappy bout, just by landing the more damaging blows and more of the blows as well. Raoni Barcelos gets this one done by close decision. Moving on to the main card. Renato Moicano versus Jai Herbert. I'm going with Jai Herbert. I'm going with Jai Herbert over Renato Moicano. I can't trust listen, I can't trust either of their chins. But I really like what I saw from Jai Herbert against Francisco Trinaldo. Listen, I just watched Muslim Salikov versus Francisco Trinaldo, upper weight class, and Matt Salikov's now ranked in the welterweight division, and he was really struggling with Trinaldo in certain areas. Don't get me wrong, he was winning the fight, but he was struggling in certain areas against Francisco Trinaldo. I know Trinaldo KO'd Jai Herbert, but what I saw before that was maybe the best anyone ever has looked against Francisco Trinaldo. He was schooling him in that second round, really started to get a real feel of things, started to school him in the third round, got clipped on the temple, went down in the third. It's a worrying chin, but then again, so is Renato Moicano's, so I don't even know if I can use that as a reason why not to pick Jai Herbert. And I like the underdog here in Jai Herbert, man. Both guys similar age, and Jai Herbert just a massive guy for the lightweight division. And I know Renato Moicano thought he was a big featherweight. I think this is the fight that's going to show us just how small Renato Moicano is against some really big lightweights. Jai Herbert got a lot of momentum from Leon Edwards beating Nate Diaz in his camp. I'm going to go with Jai Herbert getting this one done. Great sparring partner in terms of like style matchups. Leon Edwards and Renato Moicano are pretty similar opponents. Maybe not on a jiu-jitsu scale, but I don't see Moicano being able to ragdoll Herbert to the ground. I see a stand-up match And I like Jai Herbert's style against Renato Moicano. Little bit wild, really good pot shots, way more reach than Renato Moicano, and Moicano kind of likes to reach over his opponents and is used to that in the featherweight division. Just coming off a KO loss as well himself against Rafael Fiziev. Wasn't a bad KO, arguably an early stoppage. I still believe Jai Herbert's going to go out there with his career on the line and put it on and really beat Renato Moicano. I'll go with a third round TKO for Jai Herbert as Moicano starts to slow down in the third. Third round TKO for Jai Herbert. Like his style, like his size, like his length, like his range. I'm going with Jai Herbert over Renato Moicano. Both guys have suspect chins though, so who the fuck knows what's going to happen. Moving on up the card. Tim Means versus Nicolas Dalby. I'm going to go with Tim Means over Nicolas Dalby here. I think Tim Means gets this one done, and I think he gets it done in good fashion. I think he's going to get a first round KO over Nicolas Dalby. Nicolas Dalby is good, don't get me wrong, and he is 19-3. And that is a pretty underrated record when you consider that he's been cut from the UFC and he's come back. I don't believe he's going to beat Tim Means. I think he's just got a couple of defensive holes in his striking. I noticed it in the Jesse Ronson fight, which later got overturned. Another no contest? They're just removing all of his losses? He lost to Ross Houston. Oh, that was a no contest because of the blood in the cage. Okay. But Jesse Ronson, that was a no contest as well. Well, we know what we saw. Regardless of what weed Jesse Ronson was smoking, we know what we saw. Dalby went out there against Ronson, showed some real holes in his striking, and Ronson fired some shots down the pipe and put him down, eventually finishing him by a rear naked choke. I'm going to go with Tim Means. I think he's going to catch those same shots down the pipe. D-Rod couldn't really do it because D-Rod was kind of swinging a little bit wild in that fight. Didn't really look like himself, but won the fight anyway. That is not a win for Nicolas Dalby. D-Rod outclassed him every single round pretty much. Tim Means, I trust him to go out there and get the job done against Nicolas Dalby. I think he's going to fire some real good straight shots down the centre. And Dalby's style, he's a little bit herky-jerky, all over the place. I think Tim Means is going to find a clean 1-2 down the pipe and get this one done, maybe by submission. I'll say a dash choke for Tim Means. I think he's going to get a real good shot on Nicolas Dalby. 1-2 down the pipe. Dalby shoots a bad takedown. Tim Means latches up the submission. I'll say dash choke as he sprawls into a north-south position. Tim Means gets this one done. I just think his boxing's way more crisp. He's got a decent chin, even though he has been KO'd in his career. I just don't trust Nicolas Dalby's style, and I know that he's basically coming off a loss to Daniel Rodriguez. And he's also coming off a loss to Alex Oliveira. I know he won that one. But if you go back and watch that fight, which was in Copenhagen, by the way. If you go back and watch that fight between him and Alex Oliveira, Oliveira is on top of him at the end of the third round, landing shots. The referee in Copenhagen randomly stands them up out of nowhere, and then Dalby gets a takedown on Alex Oliveira. Oliveira, if he was allowed to just stay on top and work as he was from the top position, would have won that fight in Copenhagen. But no, the big comeback of Dalby, the referee has seen enough. Up you get, guys. Now Dalby gets a takedown. It was kind of robbed from Alex Oliveira. I'm going to go with Tim Means. I think he's showing some real composure at this point in his career. He's got really used to being in the octagon. You can see that in his recent performances. I know that Nicolas Dalby beats Daniel Rodriguez, who beat Tim Means. I just don't like the style, man. I think Tim Means is going to find some shots down the pipe and crack Dalby on the chin and put him out of there in the first round. Tim Means gets it done. Moving on up the card, Andre Fili versus Daniel Pineda. I'm going to go with Andre Fili, late second round TKO. I like Daniel Pineda. He's not a big guy compared to Andre Fili as he would be against a guy like Cub Swanson. I've always thought Cub Swanson could be a bantamweight in his career. He's not the biggest of featherweights whatsoever. Andre Fili is a real big featherweight. I think he's going to show some real range on Daniel Pineda, and that's going to stop the leg kicks of Daniel Pineda, knowing that Andre Fili has got good defense to leg kicks. He's been kicked there before. He's met everything in the octagon in his career. He's got the reach advantage. He's got the range advantage. He's way taller than Daniel Pineda. I think that's going to take away that leg kick option for Daniel Pineda, and I think Andre Fili's going to go out there and just box the face off Daniel Pineda in the first round. Even though it might be a little bit scrappy, I think Andre Fili's going to get the better of the first round, land some good kicks to the body and legs of Daniel Pineda from range as well, and then in the second round, once Daniel Pineda starts to slow down from the weight cut, I imagine Andre Fili's going to get a finish there as Pineda starts to slow down. I'll say a late second round TKO against the cage from Andre Fili. Daniel Pineda, I just don't like the cardio. I don't like the amount of weight he cuts either. He's a massive muscled up guy for his size in the featherweight division. And I think he's going to backfire again. If he misses weight by 5 pounds, this prediction means fucking nothing. But when he does try and make weight, he really shits the bed and gasses out bad. I'll trust Andre Fili, the veteran, to take advantage of a slowing down opponent. Fili gets it done at the end of the second. Moving on up the card, Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Danilo Marques. Now, this all depends on Kennedy Nzechukwu's takedown defense, which isn't bad and hasn't been shown to be bad at this point in his career. He actually showed really good takedown defense against Paul Craig. I know people remember him tapping to Paul Craig by triangle in the 3rd round with not a lot of time to go, but what you don't remember is this. Paul Craig got 1 takedown that entire fight. How many did he try? Paul Craig, the guy who just destroyed Jamal Hill, how many did he try against Kennedy Nzechukwu? 16. He failed 15 of them before getting 1. And by the way, when he got 1, Nzechukwu ended up on top. So I feel like I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu. Paul Craig is one of the better grapplers in the light heavyweight division, and Nzechukwu showed great takedown defense in that fight and pretty patient stand-up as well. I don't think Danilo Marques is going to be able to get down Kennedy Nzechukwu as easily as he could Mike Rodriguez, and I think Kennedy Nzechukwu is going to win this one on the feet. I'll say a unanimous decision to Kennedy Nzechukwu, stuffing takedowns, a real grueling fight, but he's going to be the busier one at range, landing more shots, and maybe we see Danilo Marques start to gas out from failing a bunch of takedowns in those later rounds. Kennedy Nzechukwu's going to win. I'll say 29-28 Kennedy. In the 2nd and 3rd round, he starts to pick up the volume, pick up the pace, and start to outland Danilo Marques quite clearly. I'm going with Kennedy Nzechukwu, rounds 2 and 3, 29-28, unanimous decision. Moving on up the card, Tanner Boser versus Ovince Saint Preux. I'm going with Tanner Boser by KO. I like Ovince Saint Preux. He's a veteran of the game. He just doesn't seem like himself and hasn't done for a very long time. Even in his last heavyweight move to Ben Rothwell. He's so hesitant. He knows if he gets hit once clean, he's going down and out cold. Tanner Boser's angry. He feels like he got robbed against Ilir Latifi because he just got held down on the ground. I'm sure it's very frustrating being out-grappled. I don't see Ovince Saint Preux being able to easily out-grapple Tanner Boser right now. I think he just hasn't really got that strength at this point in his career. He is not quite the physical specimen that Ilir Latifi is either. And I do believe Ilir Latifi beat Ovince Saint Preux at one point in his career as well. But even still, I'm going to go with Tanner Boser landing combination punches against the cage and putting down Ovince Saint Preux. And yes, I'm correct. Ilir Latifi did beat Ovince Saint Preux by standing guillotine choke. And then Ovince Saint Preux flopped to the canvas out cold. I remember it very well now. Either way, I'm going with OSP. I just think his grappling hasn't improved. I think he's sort of stalemated in his career. He's losing testosterone. And one of the big reasons why I know this is in his fights with Nikita Krylov, he dominated Nikita Krylov the first time they fought. Then Krylov picked it up and got the better of OSP the second time they fought. That shows me that OSP is the guy who's maybe aging and on the way out, and Nikita Krylov was the guy that was rising and learning as a fighter. I'm going to go with Tanner Boser here, cracking OSP on the chin. He just got finished by Jamal Hill as well. It's just every time I see him get KO'd, it's just one more straw on the camel's back. You know what I mean? And eventually it's going to end badly. And now he's moving up to heavyweight against a guy who moves fast, like a light heavyweight on the feet. If Tanner Boser doesn't sit on the outside and fucking stare at him for 3 rounds, like he sometimes does do, and I like that he's angry and he wants to get right back in there, so maybe he will make a statement and try and make a statement, I think he'll get the finish over OSP by TKO in round 1. Moving on up the card to the main event. The main event, Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov. I was shocked that I've already got to the main event. Usually you wouldn't hear me say Tanner Boser and OSP as a co-main event. That's how kind of weak this card is in certain aspects. Either way, Ciryl Gane versus Alexander Volkov is the main event of the fight night. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane. I just can't help myself but pick him in every single fight that he's in. He's just so good. And people don't like that. They don't like his performance against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Listen, Rozenstruik just bounced back against Augusto Sakai. Gane's not fighting like a bum, washed-up Rozenstruik after the Ngannou KO. Rozenstruik still got some drive. Rozenstruik still wants to be champ of the heavyweight division. Ciryl Gane has such good footwork. I don't see Volkov being able to beat him. When you look at Volkov's fights, really go back and watch Volkov's fights. Listen, I've picked Volkov a lot. I picked him against Walt Harris. I picked him by TKO against Alistair Overeem. Really go back and watch Volkov's fights. You'll notice a trend. Every time he finishes an opponent, or every time he starts beating an opponent badly, the opponent is completely stationary with their guard up, just waiting to be hit by Volkov. They don't know how to move, and this is a heavyweight problem that is usually a heavyweight problem. Like, everyone at heavyweight walks around. They plod. They just shimmy their feet around. No footwork whatsoever. Plod, step backwards a bit, step forwards a bit, step to the side a bit, step to the other side a bit. Like, it's just, there's no footwork at heavyweight. And I think that's where Volkov can take advantage of some stationary opponents. I called the Overeem would be shelling up against a cage, and that's how Volkov finished Stefan Struve. And I said that's how he's going to finish Alistair Overeem. I think I've got a pretty good read on both of these guys. I think I've got a really good prediction rate for both of them as well. 100%, I dare say. I think I'm 100% on both of these men in terms of prediction rates. So that's going to end maybe tonight, or maybe I continue it. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane over Alexander Volkov. I think the inside leg kick is going to be a real big tool that he's going to use over Volkov. And I think he's just going to be too rangy, man. If you look at the reach, Gane has a reach advantage, even though he's a little bit shorter than Alexander Volkov. And also, Ciryl Gane, arguably the tallest heavyweight outside of Alexander Volkov. So that's going to be an advantage that Volkov doesn't really have. Gane moves his feet so well. He's not a stationary target. I just like the way he moves. I think these new heavyweights who actually know how to move around a cage and move well are going to take over the division in Gane and Tom Aspinall. And I think Gane is the first one up. And I think he's going to do it against Alexander Volkov. Inside leg kicks. Volkov's got really long legs. Really high. I mean, that's a massive target for Gane to chew up in this fight. He loves those leg kicks. And I think that's going to put off Volkov immediately. Just how much Gane is moving. They're in the big cage. Volkov likes to stalk his opponents down with his size and plod forwards and cut them off and pin them against the cage and unload with combinations. Gane doesn't stop moving. I don't see how Volkov's going to deal with Gane here. I really don't. I like Gane's grappling. I don't see Volkov even going for any grappling. So I see a stand-up fight between a guy with the shorter guy and a reach advantage. And he moves his feet really well at heavyweight. And he's got a bunch of kicks. Volkov's really good. And maybe he could land that front kick to the body that's so devastating. But the amount that Gane moves around the octagon side to side, circling around his opponent, I think he's just going to dance around Volkov for 5 rounds and earn himself a 50-45 unanimous decision win. Just outlanding Volkov every round. Picking at him, chopping at his legs, jabbing to the body, jabbing upstairs. I think he's going to really show what he's made of here against Alexander Volkov. And again, something you have to take into consideration. He's a baby. He is. 31 is not young, don't get me wrong. But he is an 8-0 man. That last fight was his first main event against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. If maybe he had never been 5 rounds before, maybe I'd worry. He went 5 rounds, no problem. Wasn't the most amazing pace, don't get me wrong, but he was barely breathing heavy by the end of it. I'm going to go with Ciryl Gane, dancing around, chopping up the legs, and just tooling up Alexander Volkov for 5 rounds. Volkov will do better than Rozenstruik, don't get me wrong, but I think that's just going to up Gane's game even more because he just stays ahead of his opponent. He's like Leon Edwards. You're going to do something to him, he's going to do just enough back to win. If you're going to do more to him, he's going to do more back to you to ensure that he wins. And I think it's going to be an entertaining bout, a really great skilled showcase, and Gane's going to get his hand raised, still learning in the game. All of this time that the heavyweights are giving him are just going to be really devastating in the future. The longer that Gane waits before he fights for a belt, the worse it gets for these top heavyweight contenders. If I was Miocic, I'd be looking to take this guy on right now. If I was Ngannou, I'd be looking to take this guy on right now because he's going to be a problem in about a year or two. And I think this is the beginning of Gane. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later.